I'd like to call this town of Morristown Selectboard special meeting to order. It is 5:31, Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. Do we have any agenda changes or additions? Community comments. Go ahead. The microphone's over here, Bob.
I can get down there. I just have a question. The letter that was sent by the select board to the Natural Resources or the Environmental Commission regarding the concerns with the permit issued for the quarry part of the airport industrial development, is that letter a public record?
That's a good question. Brent, do you have an answer for that?
Since it's been filed with Act 250, District 5, it is.
It is of public record. And is that something that I could look at here at the town offices, or do I have?
You can go online, just pull it up I can help you if you can't find it, but
Great.
you don't have to come into the town offices necessarily. If you need to, I can pull it up for you, but it's available.
Okay,
readily.
great. Thank you very much. That's my question.
Okay, that was Bob Bortree. Yeah. Any other comments before we get started? Okay, I'm going to move on to our main topic. We have a presentation tonight, this evening, late this afternoon from Jeff Carr. Like many of us know Jeff, he's a state economist that's worked with the governor and worked with the legislature down in Montpelier, both the House and the Senate over the years. And we've certainly seen him on TV and elsewhere. So we're very pleased.
Be short, Mr. Chair.
Well,
I want to have, because I'd like to have just have a discussion, have an opportunity to discuss it.
yeah. So we feel very lucky to have you here. I know it was it was over a year ago that you gave the first presentation to us regarding the local options tax, and so
I was virtual
you were virtual then, and the landscape has changed.
before you went virtual.
So this is the expensive evening, huh?
Well, as a former selectman in my town, in my former town, not the one I live right now, I'm very conscious about budgetary issues with consultants.
Yeah, great.
Although I've been kind to you so far, you haven't seen a bill from me yet. Even though I did work over a year and a half ago, I still have not billed you for it yet. Well, you weren't a town when that was happening. You were still working on your charter. And I think all of you were on the charter committee, right?
No, not all of us.
Yeah.
It was probably just the three of us.
Yeah.
Up here.
I did ask Tina about it, and I was like, what do you mean we haven't paid it?
Oh, I've done all the paperwork and everything to do it.
You had to say that in front of all these people tonight, then.
I'm not here for the money.
Yeah.
I'm here,
Good.
I'm here to be a resource to you.
So,
And the other thing I just want to emphasize is, last time I was here, there were a couple of folks who like pushed back on me, like I had some vested interest in you doing a 1% local option tax. Honestly, I don't care if you do a local option tax or not, but if you decide that that's a fiscal capacity that you have, that you need for whatever purpose that you need it for, I can try to answer your technical questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find out the answer.
Okay.
Or I'll have Brent ask your town attorney, because some of these things are legal questions and I'm an economist, not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm on the finance committee in my current town, which is the town of Shelburne. And I was part of the group that spearheaded the local option tax effort in my town, successfully done. It passed 2.5 to 1 in a town referendum. I was, like I said, 10 years on the town of Essex Select Board back when the city of Essex Junction was part of the town. It was called the village of Essex Junction then. If I was on the board when they were trying to separate, it would never have happened. If I was there, I would never have let it happen. And I'm also in my town, I'm a founding member and I'm an officer in the town Economic and Community Development Committee that was founded last spring. I'm also an officer of the nonprofit that's affiliated with that town board. And just to fill out my serial municipal volunteer exercise, I am the representative of my town at the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. which is, has the only metropolitan planning, federally sanctioned metropolitan planning organization, which deals with all the funding for construction projects. In that part, I served, as a member of Chittenden County Metropolitan Planning Organization when it was separate from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And when I was chair of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, I was one of the two people that drove the merger of the Regional Planning Commission with the CCMPO. And so I went from moving out of my community in mid-February of 2020. And by the end of February, I was on finance committee in my new town, and I was the appointed member of the CCRPC for my new town.
Great, great.
So I'm a serial volunteer. I care about municipal things, and I know that you've had some past experience, not necessarily successful with dealing with local option tax issues. So
We've had discussions about the local options tax, and
yeah,
so that's what we're here tonight,
Right.
is to, learn a little bit more about that and, give you a chance to present to us some of the things that you think we need to be thinking about. We're going to give the board a chance to ask you some questions, and then we'll give the public a chance to ask some questions
just
as
to
well.
about my experience with LOT, aside from being on the committee that went through the whole process, which is a little bit different for you. It's a little easier for you than it was when we went through this process 2 years ago. I also was the consultant of the city of St. Albans when they went through and did their local option tax vote. And I also did some work for the town of Fairhaven where I told them not to do it. And in part, the reason for not to do it was I look at philosophically local option tax as a way for communities which were employment center, who are a visitor center, a tourism community. It's a way for you to directly collect resources for your expenses, your public safety expenses, your recreation budget expenses, and all those types of things, your transportation expenses from people who use your services but don't pay directly for it. They only pay indirectly through the businesses that they patronize. And if you have a situation where you're an employment center or a tourism center community, this is a way for you to collect reimbursements for the expenses that you make as a community and as taxpayers make, and as you go through the budgeting process to collect directly from those visitors, be they employees that are working at the businesses here using roads, patronizing businesses, or the visitors that come to central Vermont, which I drove through all the way from Route 100 up from the interstate until I got here. I'm grateful to see the traffic, because in my other life, I love the fact that there's a lot of people here, but I really didn't like driving through snow. Tonight. It took me an hour and 15 minutes. A good thing I left at 10 after 4 to get here, because it took me an hour and 10 minutes to get here, which should have not happened.
But they're here. We have to be fair.
Absolutely. But you know what? I didn't see very many Canadian plates.
No,
No.
they're not here.
That is discouraging to me. And I have a client who's located in northern New Hampshire, who's a dual citizen, and comes from New Brunswick, and she also lives in Colebrook, New Hampshire. And the message to me when I was talking to her, we were talking about 51st state stuff and that kind of thing. And she said, leave it to the current administration to make someone who's people who are members of the Parti Québécois proud to be Canadian again.
And the Separatist Party, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a little bit off, but I think it's important that you all know where I come from.
Okay.
And what my experience is, and what is the basis and the background for writing those couple of memos where I tried to lay out the options.
Right. So we've had a chance to read what you wrote. Do you want to give us a synopsis of that presentation, that written
Be
presentation?
glad to. I'm pleased to be back with some of you again today and with some members of the community. And so this is kind of like a little bit different from the first presentation that I had, because there's been some changes. The most significant one is we spent a lot of time last time talking about the process of going with your town attorney and going through the process of making a charter change in the state of Vermont, which only the state legislature can approve. And there was a process that you had to go through prior to the most recent iteration of the policy on local option taxes. You no longer have to get approval for your charter change from the legislature directly, so you don't have to wait until the next legislative session to go make a proposal, testify before the two committees.
That's, key area number 3, no
Yeah.
longer.
You no longer have to do that, so that affects the timing. Because a lot of times, when my town did it, for example, we decided at a select board retreat in early April that we wanted to pursue this, look at the pros and cons, and we went through it. We had some public information meetings with people about it. We went out and talked to merchants and business people in the community, and we came up with a proposal, and then and the select board decided about 3 or 4 months after that to pursue it. So we developed the public information materials and things like that, and we started talking to our our House members and our senators in Montpelier about it, because we had to introduce a bill and have our votes prior to January 1st in order to put our bill in for the charter change on January 1st. You no longer have to do that.
Right.
Now, the only thing that you have to do if you elect to pursue a local option tax, whether it be a local option tax on sales and or a local option tax on meals, rooms, or alcohol sales. There's 4 options for you. And it is not, on the state level, it's a sales and use tax, but there is no local option use tax option for you. It's only the sales tax. Now, if you decide to go forward with it and you have a successful town vote, all you need to do is have your town clerk notify the director of financial services at the Vermont Department of Taxes that you had a vote and supply the requisite documentation of the vote. And then they will turn around and they'll start you the first month of the first quarter following the time you notify. So, for example, if you were to do something at March town meeting and you were able to do that, if you got your materials into the tax department, say by the end of March, you could start assessing a local option tax as of July 1st of next year. So that's when I did the update of the memo on the estimated revenue potential. I assumed that if you were to pursue this, that would be the timeline. So because you get your revenue.
So
Yeah.
just to be clear, so if it did pass at town meeting,
Yeah.
it could be invoked as early as the 1st of July.
That's what normally would happen. You can ask the tax department if you can do it earlier, but generally they're going to wait until the first month of the quarter after you take the action and have your vote and notify them. Generally, that's the case.
Well, the businesses need time.
And the businesses
Yeah.
also
Can't
need
just
time.
go.
Well, it's. I've done this
Yeah,
now twice from start to finish. The merchants with their point of purchase software, it's a minor modification.
yeah, but it's menus, it's more involved than just point of sale.
I understand, but I
I
have,
just
in
saying.
doing it in the city of St. Albans and in the town of Shelburne, we have not had one merchant criticize the administrative burdens associated with it. So, and they tell us it's because there's modern point of purchase and there's very little that they have to do. Because you're piggybacking off something that's already collected. So it's not like you're gonna come in with 1% sales tax and there isn't already a state tax. So it really is a simple modification of in today's software. So I thought that was
Sure,
interesting.
you have software, just saying. I deal with vendors that don't have software. There's small businesses that don't have all. the
Yeah,
things.
well, we have those in Shelburne and City of St. Albans too.
Yeah.
And to add the 1% isn't as significant as some people would have you believe. So that's number one. You don't have to go through legislative testimony and things like that in order to have your charter change happen. The second thing that happened was last year, they changed the percentage of revenue from 70% of the 1% assessment to 75%. What happened previous, the towns would get 70% of the revenue net of administrative costs, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the other 30% net of the state's administrative costs would go to payment in lieu of taxes or PIPA. And that's the fund payments to communities where they have significant amounts of state property that come that are on the tax roll, property tax rolls. Last year they changed it from 70 to 75%. So that's good news. You get 5 percentage points more of every transaction. The other part is that you also then have to pay 75% of the tax department's administrative costs for processing. So that went up from 70 to 75, but the revenue is much more significant than the administrative costs, although it's not cheap. It's $5.96 for every piece of paper that they push. And so when you do a local option sales tax, for example, okay, it's the way that the department classifies a document. So it's conceivable that every reseller and things like that. And one of the things that I did in the first time I did it with the city of St. Albans is we didn't include any e-commerce sales, because at that time when we did it, it was a long time ago, and e-commerce was just growing. I said, we'll use that as a quote unquote factor, so that you know that my revenue, that you can expect revenue forecast is conservative. Okay. But now e-commerce has grown, both on the sales tax side and also on the meals and rooms side. Well, actually mostly rooms side, with HomeAway, Expedia, and all those other folks that are out there, and Airbnb, that's become too significant to not put in the estimated revenue potential. And so we didn't have a good idea what e-commerce is in any individual community, because nobody collects that data, because nobody has a reason to, because it's not subject to local option, it's subject to the state tax. It just goes to the state and they pay it to the state. And so they don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out whether or not someone who's responsible for paying it as a reseller, or someone who has an Airbnb or something like that, is actually in your town. And not surprisingly, when the city of St. Albans did it, there was a lot of confusion between the location of businesses, whether they're in the city or in the town.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of, some people, you have mailing addresses that are in the city, but you're located in that town. And so there was some time, you don't have that. But even so, one of the things that I did when we did the estimate of revenue for the e-commerce sales tax in my town was we underestimated the amount of documents at $5 at 70% at $5.96 at the time that the tax department was going to do, and they clearly make it's every document that comes in some cases resellers send it in for every sale and those kinds of things. So I adjusted the estimate in your estimate of revenue potential for that understanding of how they define a document that they're going to assess an administrative cost on. So that was the second big chart. And so the third big change for me was an updated estimate of revenue potential for you with all those revisions that came about and as part of the program. The who pays issue is still the same, and I know that that's an issue of importance to the community and to the board. The experience that the 59 communities as of July 1st that have it is that most of them is the 1% additional assessment on the eligible transactions. It doesn't modify it, change behavior. If you have $100 item, it's $1. If you'll burn more than $1 of gas to try to avoid it. In this state, if you try to go somewhere else. We've had no complaints in my current community on that front, and we've got some pretty conservative folks in my community in Shelburne who, as a general rule, don't like taxes. There's always that part of the population in every community, and I understand that, and they have every right to not like taxes. So those are all the same issues. A whole heck of a lot more municipalities are assessing 1% less than first time. When we talked about this back in April of, 23? An awful lot of communities are doing it now. It's almost 6. And if you go down the list of people, you can access them on the Department of Taxes website. There'll be a variety of municipalities ranging from employment centers to folks that obviously, like Winhall, for crying out loud, has a local option tax, and obviously that's because they're attached to Stratton. And so they're generally communities, and everybody in Northwest Vermont, pretty much around the Burlington, South Burlington, Colchester Employment Center has a local option tax, and most of them have all of them. There are 2 communities through their own charters, City of Burlington and the City of Rutland, have their own separate gross receipts, local option tax. You and 57 other communities, if you decided to do it, you would piggyback, the charter changes to piggyback and have the state administer it, so you don't have to administer it. Usually you don't have the resources to do it yourselves. And you're paying $5.96 per return, 75% of it for if you were to go in this direction, for having the state do that. And it's kind of nice. They give you a report with the transactions, the number of transactions and the dollar amount, and they send the cash to the communities by the end of the month following the end of the quarter. So what happens is, so if you were to say, start it on July 1st, it would cover the tax filings, the sales and use, if it's sales, the meals, rooms, and alcohol from July 1st to September 30th, which are due by October 28th, the following month. That's the way people pay. A lot of people pay monthly, so it's by the 28th of the month following the month. There's a lot of small people that only pay once every 3 months. They're quarterly filers. Tax department gets the returns on the 28th of October. You'll have your check by mid-November. So it's pretty fast. I was surprised at how fast we got the actual check after our first quarter, when we put it in place on July 1st a couple of years ago. The tax department's gotten really good at it, and you'll have data that you'll actually have the number of transactions that happened in sales and use, and you get the total ones. So you know the number of establishments that you have that have the club and food sales. Actually, know the bricks and mortar retail. And what you can do is look at the difference between the number of transactions in the bricks and mortar and the total, and that's your e-commerce. And that's what I did in my community. I did like my community. Since we don't know what the e-commerce level of activity is, I've made some estimates based on the per capita income in the community versus the state average. And there is some data out there on e-commerce transactions. I think in this case, there's a study from Bank of America or some, it's Bank of America or it was more JP Morgan. I can't remember which one, it's in the memo, which there was in Vermont, each person per capita on e-commerce sales spends a little over $4,000 in Vermont. Now it's not that everybody does it, okay? There are some people that do it a lot, like my wife, and she probably spends more than that in the e-commerce. But people have Amazon Prime memberships. It's like all the time. So we use that, adjusted that amount for the per capita difference between the per capita personal income in the community versus the state, and then to 50% of it for that. So I wanted to be conservative on the e-commerce side. And I didn't put anything in explicitly for meals and rooms. But the other soft part is you don't have enough reporters under the tax department for rooms.
Right.
So I went back to the last year, which I think 2 or 3 years ago before the pandemic. I think the pandemic probably did something to your room base. And I took that and I just used that as the base forecast going forward. And then when I go out 10 years, I have the benefit of having done long range sales tax forecasts for the state and long range meals, rooms, and alcohol tax. And I just use those that I use as part of the Capital Debt Affordability Advisory Committee long-term projections for the state. And so I just increase them from your base by those rates to kind of give you an idea of how much potential you have. So my estimate is that after the first year, when you only have 3 quarters, if you put it in place on July 1st, you remember, because you only get the revenues on a 1 quarter lag, you're only going to get 3 quarters worth of revenue. You're going to have 4 quarters worth of activity. And the first year that you get 4 quarters of revenues will be the second year that it's in place if you decide to go that way. I think you can collect somewhere between $1.2 and $1.6 million a year and have a significant chunk of that not paid by your residents. There will be some. Anybody that patronizes the restaurants or goes to the retail stores that you have in the community, residents will do it. And it's the same is true in my community. as well. But by and large, you know, in my community, for example, we have Shelburne Farms, Shelburne Museum, and Teddy, which are three of the top 8 tourist destinations in the state, in the state. And it's amazing the number of people that pass through the town of Shelburne, but you know, there's a significant ability for you with your situation with the tourists and as kind of an employment center, to be able to have some revenue potential here for use, however it is you think as as a select board, you're the highest on the food chain in the community in terms of making policy. And so there's a lot of options for you, and if you decide to go in this direction, I would strongly recommend, as one of my points, that you develop a policy for how you spend this money if you go in this direction. And I have a bias, and it should be for capacity building. In other words, for things that build the infrastructure of the community, whether it's recreational or service delivery, those kinds of things, which builds the capacity for you to realize the benefit from increased levels of activity. For example, in St. Albans City, they decided that they were not going to use the proceeds of a local option tax for budget, okay, but they were going to use it to fund recreational asset development, and they used it to build a beautiful pool that the community wanted, and they use it not only for residents, but they charge people that come in and use it, you know, and those kinds of things. So that was part of the thing, and they used that to build the infrastructure of the city, because they have a lot of people that come in and they need good infrastructure. In my community, as I put in the memo, we have several uses for it. One is to fund infrastructure, but we got very specific and said you can use it for pay as you go for infrastructure expenditures, but we can also use it to fund the debt service for general obligation debt that we might issue, which obviously allows your infrastructure dollar to go farther in order to do that. We also had, as a matter of policy, that the select board had the discretion to use it to fund emergency appropriations. And what they were careful to do is they didn't want it to be used for general budgetary purposes. But the town of Williston uses it for budgetary purposes. I think about a third of their budget is funded by local option taxes, but you don't have Maple Tree Place like they do. And you don't have Walmart and Costco, and they don't have Costco, they have Home Depot, excuse me. So those are things to keep in mind when you do this. And one of the things in my community that was very important was the select board did not want to use it for budgetary, run-of-the-mill budgetary expenses, except in an emergency, because they didn't want to send a message to the community that there was a select board slush fund for a budget ideas. And so that's what as you can see, I'm direct. Okay. I don't mince words because I want everybody to understand the ramifications. Okay. And then I guess the only other thing I think that's important for you to consider is the importance of the public education campaign. It is vitally important that it be comprehensive, that you have knowledgeable people, maybe on a lot committee, a working group or something like that, that you might commission if you want to investigate this, and then if you make a decision. We did extensive proactive outreach on this. And we went and we talked to all the major groups in the community that was out there. We had the Shelburne Professional and Business Association. We have a senior community called Wake Robin that has like 285 people living there. And we went out and we presented to them. We set up a booth at the farmers market in the community. We have the Winter Festival of Lights, and we had a booth there, and those kinds of things. Anytime Shelburne Museum had a concert, we went and reached out to people. And there was we have a village center, and there was a big party that's thrown around holiday time, and we had a booth set up there with people who were knowledgeable, who could answer folks' questions. And we wrote op-eds for select board members that they put in the local paper, like you do, which I mean, these are all things that you guys know how to do anyway, but it's extra special important for local option tax because it is easy to misunderstand what it is you're trying to do. And it's easy to lose track of the most important thing, which is you have a lot of people that come into the community and use your services, and you have, without a lot, you have no direct way to be reimbursed for those significant public safety, transportation, and recreational assets that your taxpayers pay the cost for, that these people would otherwise come and use essentially with no direct cost, except that they pay the business, and then you get the money indirectly from the business by having their business be successful, and they can cover your property tax. So I know I went a little longer than I wanted to, but I think it was really important to just highlight these things, particularly, you know, considering the last time we got together, and, you know, there was a lot of consternation about it, and I don't diminish it. I think it's important to address all those things head on. And I think it's important for the folks to understand is, like I said, I don't care if you do this. I just think that if you want to do this, I can help you from my experience, not make a mistake.
Great, thank you. You've hit a lot of points that are on my paper already. I don't feel the need to reiterate them, but just to be clear, if the board did decide to put this on the ballot for town meeting, would there be two separate articles, one to invoke the LOT, the lot, and then another to perhaps designate how that LOT money is spent?
I don't think you do a charter change for how the money is spent. I think the select board makes a policy in advance of the vote and we publish the policy. That's how we did it in Shelburne, and that's how they did it in St. Albans City. Because I think how you use the proceeds is very important to the community.
Right.
And that also is at least indirectly associated with the incidence argument as to who pays. So and particularly if you're using the lot proceeds to build the capacity of the community to provide services and to build the recreational amenities and those types of things and the types of environmental infrastructure that protects the environment, the key thing in local economic development is how do you take advantage of what you are without becoming more like everybody else? And one of the things that you can do is you can put in good infrastructure protections, which protects the quality of the environment. It's really high quality recreational opportunities like paths and trails for your folks and other recreational amenities. And you could also focus on the types of things like transportation infrastructure, which helps your businesses, attract and train workers. If it's difficult to get here, people won't want to work here. To the extent that they're not working remotely. And I know that, we have more hybrid and remote working relationships than we've had in the past, but still by and large, people show up to work, they still got to get to work.
I guess I'm just thinking if there's that second article that the voters enact, that rather than having a select board policy, which gets slushy perhaps, but the voters say, hey, this money will be spent, let's just say, on infrastructure, and we spell out what that infrastructure is, then it's cast in stone going forward.
You know better than I on that front, because you're more in tune with the local politics than I am. Where I come from, if the select board makes a policy, it's usually thoughtful. It doesn't have to be ingrained in the town charter. And
Okay.
I'd be interested if your town attorney would think that you could potentially limit decisions by future select boards by having such a policy in your charter. I don't know if you're going to be able to convince your town attorney that that's a good thing to do, but I'm not a lawyer. Just in the comments.
Yeah.
But I have said on a select.
Other questions from the board? George, go ahead. I figured you'd have questions, George.
Well, I actually had one, there's just documentation is really good. Let me frame the question a little bit, Jeff. I know in the past you've been asked about how much of it is residential, how much is non-residential, and it's very difficult to answer because that's not how the data is collected in any way, shape, or form. So the question comes around, there's a concept that people are floating about some of it being reflecting the residential share, however you calculate that, using it that for tax reduction. And the non-residential being used for things like infrastructure and whatnot. The fact that online services are built into the sales tax. And the fact that they're coming from companies who are charging based on whether the town has a lot in place or not. Does that, and I'm not saying I disagree with that concept, but I want to have the facts of that concept in place. Does that help put a number on LOT sales tax based on e-commerce, because they're delivering to people in Morristown, which you would assume are residents?
Yes. You have to, it's by their place of residence. Yeah.
Fair assumption, so that if that was something to be pursued, we could look at e-commerce revenues and say, these are part of the sales tax, but they're the part of sales tax paid by residents.
Yeah, could be.
And is there a system to come up with that number now? As e-commerce becomes more and more of a standard.
There are a variety of ways you could do it, okay?
Okay.
The e-commerce numbers that I've put in here are, I would say, by and large, a residential impact, but it's still a very soft number because we don't have the real actual data. So I could make an argument to you that I believe that pretty much 90% or higher of that category is probably resident born.
Of e-com.
Yeah, of e-commerce.
Yeah, okay.
What I'm not going to be able to tell you very well is how much of your bricks and mortar is residential versus e-commerce.
Right.
There is a way that you could probably do that. You could, and the way I would do it, if you task me with that, is I would take the residential population. I would look at the jobs that are located here in the community. And I would look at the state estimates of out-of-state and out-of-country visitors that come to Vermont and by season, and I try to figure out, where you're positioned in terms, you probably have a big summer and a big winter, but probably not as much in the fall although I don't know, there's a lot of cars driving around here now. But you could do what I call an effective population, which is the sum of days that employees and visitors are here, and then add that to the residents. And then you could sum up the number of days, every resident can get 365, for example, and we have census population counts for that, and even in essential years. And you could get a total effective population. And you could do a percentage, the residential population is of that effective daily population. And you could say that for the other categories, like meals, rooms, and alcohol, just picking a number completely out of the air, if the residents comprise, 32% of the days, of the effective population, then you could allocate retail sales, bricks and mortar retail sales, rooms, rents, meals, receipts, and alcohol receipts based on that percentage of the residential population is of the effective population, and you could use that percentage as property tax reductions. As a matter of fact, the city of Rutland uses its local option meals and rooms and alcohol and sales tax to reduce property taxes. They make that specific, but then they have a Walmart. They're not going to have a Walmart for much longer because it's moving out, but they have a Walmart.
And you have an experience with LOT towns that do use some of their.
I'm not aware. I'm not aware that there's a quantitative approach like I was suggesting to you. I'm an economist. I love numbers. I do quantitative stuff all the time. I don't believe that a lot of towns are that sophisticated. And I don't think they distinguish between the incidents of where some of the local option taxes come from in order to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm absolutely sensitive to that on your part. The problem is that you should know is even after we get all the data, we're still not going to know. Because you're never going to know the actual split from the meals, rooms, and alcohol.
There's gonna be best estimate.
That's correct. But if that's what you feel needs to be done, if you think that this is the right thing to do to talk with the community about, it's something that can be done. Not precisely, but something with logic and with real numbers behind it.
That's defensible.
Yeah.
Based on assumptions that are being
Yeah.
made and as well as they can be.
Yeah, and if you want me to, I can put a number out there and then I'll get as far away from you as quickly as I can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Don.
Other questions?
I have a couple of small ones, but I definitely have a statement I'd like to make. But curious, the, sales and use that includes, utility bills and cable bill, correct?
It does.
So.
Anything that's subject to the sales,
Go up an additional 1%.
anything that's subject to the state sales tax is covered by this, but not not the motor vehicle purchase and use or the gas tax or the diesel tax. None of those are in this.
The other question I had was $5.96. We don't have any way to judge the documents. Who's paying that? Is that coming out of
It comes out of your allocation. You get,
out of the 75% that we get?
no, the merchants report sales.
So the.
1% is allocated to you. 6% is allocated to the state.
Right, but then 75% of it we keep and we send 25%.
Well-
So I'm unclear as to where's that $5.95 in
It
documents
is,
coming out of?
it is deducted from your net revenues. So if you have $100 in a local option tax, $1 comes to you. Out of that, you pay $5.96. So you actually have 75% of that. So you actually have to have a sale around 70 some odd dollars in order to break even. And you usually do. All states have that. So if you have $1,000, $100 come to you. And then 75% of 596 is taken away from that $100. And you get $75 less $5.96 times 0.75. That's how, yeah, that's what you get.
Okay, I'm not following.
Okay, $1,000,
Right.
1%.
1%, but I'm not getting 1%. I'm
No,
getting 75% of that 1%.
right, because you get 75% of that 1%.
1%. So,
And then from that comes 75% times 5.96. That comes out of it too. And so your net revenue is 1% times 0.75 minus 0.75 times 5.96.
So it's,
so.
so
we're really
it's
getting-
less than 75%,
Yeah.
Yes, but
but it's not gonna be
But you're-
50%.
you don't have to hire somebody to administer it. You're paying the tax department to do it.
Well, we aren't paying them. Because my property tax department, so we all pay the tax people. However, my concern is.
Well, the tax people aren't receiving your property tax. They're,
Well,
the programs for the state of Vermont are, the tax department's just collecting it.
Anyways,
so anyway, yeah, I just am trying to find out what the costs are to the retailers is the question, trying to figure out.
There's no cost to the retailers except there's no cost to the retailers except to reprogram their machines in order to be able to report the sales under this program. If retailers aren't paying it, the people who are buying the goods from the retailers are.
So they've got to charge the 1% and then everything else, okay.
And you know, let's be honest here. Sales tax, meals, rooms, alcohol tax are elective taxes. You don't want to pay 1%, don't buy them. Don't buy them.
All of our employees out there hear that? People that are working, I hope you're that.
I mean, it's not like they're taxing your income or you don't have a choice. You can elect to buy whatever you buy that's assessed under the 1%. You don't have to pay. Or you can go to New Hampshire if you want, but you're gonna burn more gas than what it is than your 1%.
other questions from the board at this point?
Curious to hear what community has to say myself.
Okay. So I guess I would open it up to the community to come up, introduce yourselves, and I'm going to say either direct your questions to Mr. Carr or to myself, or your comments to myself, as we usually do. But please introduce yourself for those on online. So, yeah, if you got, I guess if you want to just line up behind the microphone, I assume that there's going to be more than one.
I have a number of questions here. I've been in both the retail and wholesale business. I had a website.
Yeah,
Um,
your name?
Oh,
Sorry,
I keep forgetting.
I know you, Ed.
Ed Lowington, Morristown. So the first question is, are the technical details which you went through, and I lost track of quantitatively pretty soon, are they going to be made, put into a report so we can review them slowly until we understand them?
There has been a report put together.
Okay.
The board had a report. It's a 9-10 page report that we've had a chance to look at.
Thank you. Okay.
And so I'm assuming that report can be made available.
It's in.
It's posted on the website.
It's posted on the website. So the report
Good.
is there that
So
Jeff has put together.
I'll look at this.
So a lot of what he said tonight, Ed, is in the report
Excellent.
in much more detail.
Great. From my experience, in my e-commerce site, I had a shopping cart that would be considered primitive today. But it was the hot item at the time. And with a few keystrokes, you could tell the zip code from which the purchase had been made. What you need here, of course, is not state by state, which is all we got. You'd want the actual zip code. If you decide to go down this route, you're going to want to convince the voters to go along with you. And from the last time we went through this, I think a big question that might have killed the idea was who's paying for this. I heard that discussed a number of times. That's important. If we're paying our own local options tax, and that's it, it's kind of circular. It's no bargain.
Great.
I would look at two ways to get this. First of all, I do understand from recent discussion that point of purchase software will give you the zip code now. It just has to be brought out of the data. So that's a good new, may not even be new, feature of point of purchase. That's your bricks and mortar sale. Okay. But knowing who's paying for this is important. And I suppose if you can select
I'll
what's
be just
being
a little
what.
lenient on the 2 minutes, but that was the 2-minute warning, but.
Okay, I'm trying to get through this quickly. I have, if not the current answers, I have some approaches to getting them. This information should not be that hard to get. The other is
Tom.
Local merchants that have bricks and mortar stores could be encouraged, persuaded, threatened. Keep zip code information. However you do that at the point of purchase, even if your software won't just pop it right up for you, this is when it's aggregated, it's totally anonymous. Just, ma'am, sir, would you mind telling me your zip code? If you're using credit card information, a lot of software now keeps it for you. You just have to learn how to pull it out of there. And the select board working with the merchants should get that information. I think that's about it for now.
Thank you, Ed.
There's a quick one that information to take the board. On bricks and mortar retailer, we already have the information from the tax department, as long as there's 10 merchants reporting in each category. And for the retail sales, we have more than enough. For the alcohol sales, we have more than enough. We just don't have enough room. For orders. So all that retail information, you don't have to ask people for their zip codes, because the tax department already reports that information by the location where the sale is made to bricks and mortar retailer or the alcohol sales point, or if we had more than 10 rooms providers, it would be by rooms provider as well. So the real issue is e-commerce, whether it's e-commerce for Airbnb, HomeAway, Expedia, all those providers. or the e-commerce. And the only thing I'd say on the e-commerce side is the smallest area of revenue productivity, if you were to do a local option tax, including sales, meals, rooms, and alcohol, the smallest area is the e-commerce sales, which is the one that has the highest incidence of resident. Okay.
Thank you. I did let,
Could you speak into
I
a
do want
mic?
to say, I let Ed go over a little bit. I think it's fair. Tonight's an important conversation. Let's go with 3 minutes per person and everybody will get a second chance at the microphone.
Microphone.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jen Hubbard. I have Moss Home Goods. It's a brick and mortar retailer across the street. And like, I have some kind of basic questions, which is one of the reasons I sort of wanted to go first. Because I'm kind of new to this issue. It looks like the two options that are being proposed are either sales and use or meals, rooms, and alcohol, right? But from what I understand sitting here today, it seems as though these things can all be parsed a little separately, right? So that there's no real reason to have meals, rooms, and alcohol together. When it seems to me that meals and alcohol is a very unpopular idea. And like, I don't think anybody has any problem with a rooms tax. Other than the fact that it's harder to find those people, but I don't, how is that an excuse really, you know? To me, it like, that's, I guess, just my question is that what, like, who decided that those are the two options?
I think it's, Jeff can correct me here, but the statute made all four of those available. We can choose whatever
Right,
permutation we want of those four.
right. And it looks like, as I'm skimming over this, that Elmore adopted a 1% rooms tax, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me, I mean, it seems to me that you're risking losing it all by putting rooms, meals, and alcohol together on a vote. When it's going to get voted down, you lose, when you could just do the rooms tax for now and then reassess whether you want to add meals and alcohol to it. I mean, it seems like that combination is very 19th century, like roadside inn. You know, like why are these things wedded to each other is my real question. And then I guess my other question is just about like this sort of hand waving impossibility of finding Airbnb hosts. Why is that like, so this falls to like, you know, Alan and Sam and I, because we're easy to find. That doesn't seem right when when you go on Airbnb and you look up Morristown, Vermont, there's over 1,000 entries. So there's more of them than there is in businesses in downtown. It seems like that would be, and then I guess my third thing would be, why not do a 2% rooms tax?
Yeah, by statute.
You can't. One, okay, all right.
The only two, the only.
Yeah, it said that Burlington had a 2 or something.
Because they run their own gross receipts tax. They don't
Okay.
Go through the state.
Okay, well, that answers that question then. Yeah, so,
It's statutory and possible.
okay, yep.
Thank
So,
you.
that's all.
And I would just say in terms of the STRs, short-term rentals are, I think it's fair to say there's going to be more discussion on that and how that's all going to go forward.
Just
Go
to
ahead.
clarify, the reason we don't have Airbnb, HomeAway, and Expedia is nobody gets charged a local option tax in Morristown. It's only the state. So we don't have state data. They don't collect data they don't need. And so if you had a 1% local option tax on rooms, okay, the only thing that we know for sure is that you've got less than 10 providers of rental rooms that are bricks and mortar. The rest is, there's listings, okay? And once that happens, you would, if you were to go in the local option tax route, it would be reported to Airbnb, Expedia, HomeAway, and most people that they have to collect the 1% tax in Morristown. And so then you would get some data. But since you don't know how many bricks and mortar, you won't be able to figure out the difference between the two. So it's not a question that it's easy to do. The tax department collects data and publishes it. The problem is you don't have enough bricks and mortar providers or rooms to know that. And so with under 10, if you were to go just with a rooms tax, would have no idea what amount of money you're going to get. it wouldn't be anywhere near what you got from bricks and mortar retail or e-commerce. So you would go through the vote, and the potential is for you to not get very much revenue for your troubles.
Also have the option generally line item in each one. So
Right.
separating them out so that people can vote for all three or one. That was discussed. We haven't
Right.
made any decisions, but we
The
have
only-
options.
The only reason that they're together is that they're in the statute together, okay? And the tax department collects the data and reports it in a way which can be useful to you to understand what the revenue potential is. You don't have to do all three. Some people did. Killington, for example, did a, I think, I don't know if I have this backwards or not because it was a long time ago. They started with a rooms tax and they repealed it and went to a sales tax, or it might have been they started with a sales tax and went to a rooms tax. I can't remember. But there's only been a couple, in one community, I think is repealed something as of October 1st.
Montgomery.
Yeah. Go, I'm gonna have to,
What's that? No. When they rent a room.
Yeah.
If you were to have a 1% meals and rooms tax.
Yeah.
Expedia and Airbnb would know that as part of the remuneration from doing those rents, that they would owe 7% to the state of Vermont, of which 6 went to the state of Vermont and 1% went to Morristown.
Okay.
But without having the 1% local option tax, the tax department collects it for the state of Vermont. They don't care about what happens in the individual community because it's not part of their administrative function.
So.
Only when there's local option tax.
Tax, then we would get that data.
Yes,
Okay.
well, you wouldn't get it directly because they're not gonna tell you individual reporters or individual, but you would get it in a lump. And then you would then have to figure out how much bricks and mortar you have, which they don't report because your rooms base is less than 10 reporting units. And so they suppress the data because you can figure out individual reporters in less than 10 units. So you would get a commingled number and you would have to make some estimates about how much was bricks and mortar and how much was done through the e-commerce.
go ahead, Martin.
Okay, Martin Green. Thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. I don't see any downside from what I'm hearing tonight, particularly as it regards the meals tax, the alcohol tax, the rooms tax, as a source of revenue for the town, providing that the way that money comes in is specifically allocated. And I would suggest that we just start out slow. I mean, start out with something, as Jeff pointed out, it's been referred to a consumption tax, something where you don't have to do this. I mean, I think we all know that the cost of going out to eat is crazy these days. But say, for instance, you're spending $100 on a meal. I don't think anybody that's doing that is going to begrudge $1 on that. So I would suggest that we just start it out slow. And if there's problems that people have at this point, regarding the information, the education about it, we wait on the sales tax piece of it. But just to go start out with those particular taxes and then see how that works from this point. But I see it as a win-win, and just as a way to bring in that revenue from townspeople and from visitors here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Alan?
Hey, everybody. Jeff, I think we worked on the trap project together. Yeah, good to see you again. All right, Jeff, I can respectfully fully
Name?
see. My name's Alan Van Anda. I'm from Lost Nation.
Yep.
Brick and mortar restaurant, brewery, community space here in Morrisville. Jeff, I can see from the traffic that you just went through today what you assume our community is. And I think I would like to get a polling from everybody, especially the board, that we can all agree that we are not Stowe and we are not Shelburne. Is everyone in agreement, at least within that, right?
Yeah.
This weekend, I had my hostess call out because she got hurt at track meet. I worked the entire weekend, open to close, 65,000 steps in 2 days. All of Stowe, 2+ hour wait for every single restaurant in Stowe, good and bad, good food, bad food, didn't matter. 2+ hour wait. We didn't have a wait all weekend. We're working our butt off. We're not getting the tourists. That Stowe is seeing. They stop the town line. They don't cross over. That's number one. Number two, Jeff, you said that that retailers will not pay this tax. Let me give you a quick economic example. I charge $7 for a pint of beer. That's $7 straight out. Boom. I withhold and I personally pay the state 9%, 63 cents on that. I personally withhold and pay the 3% credit card charge. And now I would be withholding the next 7 cents, 1%. I eat that. That's me because I can't charge my consumer $7.93 for a pint of beer because my market will not bear that additional cost. So me as a retailer, speaking directly to everybody, I will take on that cost. I will do it because I have to, because I need customers coming in my door. But that is the true reality. This is not just pass it along. Two more things. I ran the numbers, the zip code data of my credit cards the other day in preparation for this meeting. About 28% of my business annually is out-of-staters. The remaining, what are we, whatever that is, 78%. No, there, thank you. When I get up here, I can't do math. That remaining part is within our surrounding communities. Now, okay, fine. Morrisville might not make up that part. Hyde Park does, Wolcott does, Lamoille County does. I consider them locals. I consider them part of our community. So even though they're not paying into this tax base, they're supporting this town and they're making this town vibrant. Without our surrounding communities, we wouldn't have a town. We wouldn't even be having this argument or this discussion rather. Final point to the board. 5, 6 cannabis shops I think we have in town now. I can't keep track because there's a new one every week. Did we impose the 1% on them? Are we getting that money? Why?
Yeah,
It's
Jeff.
20% with a 1% local option tax. Wasn't that, I just read, I literally before I came in, I read the,
This is something to its own tax, sales tax.
that's, yeah, but there was a,
By the state general sales tax. It's only the goods that are covered by the state's general sales tax, just like there's.
no, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not saying to apply this 1% to the cannabis. I'm saying that in the state statute, towns have an option to make the 20% tax 21% and take another 1% off the cannabis shops. And I wasn't sure if that was happening or not.
I believe that's.
Okay, we can take a look at statute maybe later. What?
I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, you're an economist. You know, but then the other, okay, fine. Since we want to be combative on that.
The only thing I'm gonna be combative about, I've
Yeah.
lived in this state for over 40 years.
Sure.
Don't tell me I don't understand the state.
Well, but you just said you don't understand. I'm not trying to.
Okay.
Wait, well, so last one. I would love to, Jeff, I think you do a great job. And I think, yeah, I think we do a great job. I think we work together. Listen, really quick. I'd love to see an economist that wasn't so pro. You say you're indifferent for this, but you're really pushing for it. So it'd be great. Yes, you absolutely are. Everything has been positive, man. So
Thank
well,
you.
you certainly are providing.
Thank you.
it in a
Thank you.
state that-
I'm saying you can do it if you choose to.
Dan, come on up.
Hello, my name's Dan McLaughlin, the mayor of Morrisville. My question is for Jeff. Jeff, right? Is that the name?
Yes.
This guy? I was wondering if you could elaborate from your experience, what all the data that we will collect will help us as we go into the future around designing either recreation or opportunities for other business people or builders or landlords around creating stuff by having this information from the local option to decide, to make decisions as we go in the future. A lot of people really don't understand the value of the data that we may collect around this tax.
Well, the only data that you're gonna collect is from the payers. And the ones that elect to pay the tax. Now, I mean, some businesses, like was said earlier, could absorb it themselves, just like they can absorb the tariffs that are being assessed on all foreign goods when you're a retailer. So the only data that you're really going to get is a report that here's a number of documents that are covered under each aspect of the local option tax. And here's the net dollar amount. And so you have to know what administrative costs you're paying, what percentage of the revenue you're getting, and so you can back calculate into the e-commerce part. That's what I did in the town of Shelter. When we did it that way. So we have our first information about the amount of e-commerce activity that happens in our state, in our town, both from the standpoint of the sales tax, but also from the meals, rooms, and alcohol tax, because the tax department calculates and provides 180 days after the end of the reporting period, detailed information on the sales, the number of establishments that pay it, and the tax into that. So you can back calculate the e-commerce data from that. And so you can use that to make policy if you're interested in that. You can do that to make judgments about incidents, okay? And you can have a dialogue with the business people as to whether or not they're reducing their margins in order to keep prices level and things like that. Those are all legitimate things to discuss. Those are all policy decisions for the board. If you'd like to go in this way, to discuss with the local business people as to who has pricing power that would enable, you know, this 1% added on to all the other costs that they have. And they're not going down. I don't envy your decision on this because, hey, I pay my employees healthcare. I'm shocked at the direction that that's going right now. And so it's not just taxes or costs of ingredients that are all going up. It's, you know, and you got to pay your people and all the benefits that go along with that. So you'll get some information about what's paid and the number of returns, and then you can do some calculations. But even in those cases, the town is going to have a hard time with its room space. And you're still gonna back calculate into the e-commerce stuff. So it's gonna be, you'll have better information. You'll be better able to make decisions, and maybe you'll find that, you know, the alcohol tax part doesn't work. Or isn't worth it for the amount of money that you're getting when you start to get that data, or maybe the sales part you don't want to do. And if you did do it, you could repeal it, like some communities have done when they realized that it wasn't worth the cost for the amount of money that you're getting. But my estimate is, and based on the data that's available and the way that I've done it in other communities, that you have fiscal capacity to do some of the capital projects. We use it to fund our capital budget in our town. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make the investments that we need to do to keep the lake unpolluted and to, you know, keep our community safe.
Thank you, Dan. Other comments? Yeah, come on up, Bob. Yeah, let's.
Bob Bortry.
I do too.
Given that we are not a Woodstock, a Stowe, a Manchester, probably the majority of the tax burden is going to fall on Morrisville citizens and the citizens of the surrounding Lamoille County. I'm not adverse in some degree to paying an option tax. As I look at where we stand as a community, we have a lot of needs and very little appetite for increasing the overall tax burden of the citizens of Morrisville. You're working on a budget right now. It's going to be very difficult. I understand that. And I feel in a very difficult place to support this or not support this. But I do feel that in order to meet the needs that our community is facing, we have to have some additional source of income. And that's not likely going to be coming in the form of a town tax hike to the degree that we're going to need it. We're looking at $8 million in roads alone. $8 million in roads alone. Where does this money come from? You know, we have to make some tough decisions. We all have to, like it or not, be able to pony up some money to take care of our town. I would fully support an option tax that was specifically used for roads. I would support that. And I think that's what you were talking about in a specific use. I'm sure there are many other needs in the town. What I would not support is utility bills going up and so on and so forth. That's a non-starter for people. That really is. You're going to run into a lot of opposition with that. But there's a thoughtful way to present this so that we don't hurt businesses, as we just heard, so that we're supporting those businesses. there's got to be a way that we can do this in a way that the community wants to support it. And that's what's got to happen. You've got to convince the community that this is worthwhile supporting. Otherwise, it's dead in the water. And, you know, I will promote this, provided that we have a direct cause for that money to go to. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Somebody else, come on up.
Hi, Sam Guy, I have Guy's Front Yard. We have 4 locations. Our first location to get hit with this tax was Williston. And to be quite honest, I was scared to death because I thought it was going to kill our sales. Didn't miss a beat. Then we got it in Montpelier, and then we got it in St. Albans. Didn't miss a beat. We passed it on. Our customers didn't even know it. They didn't have a clue. We just packed that 1% on. We had to. It's a law. You tell them it's a sales tax, they take it. So, I mean, it's for the merchants. I wouldn't be worried. It won't affect, you know, maybe Alan does you, but I don't think it's going to affect anybody else because the customer doesn't even realize it. And we're not pulling anything. It's right out there. That's what it is. So, in my opinion, I'd much rather have an elective tax than a property tax, because then you have, as Jeff said, an option to pay it or not. You spend less money, you pay less. Everybody gets to pay that tax, whether they're a millionaire or they make $10 or whatever. Everybody gets to pay that tax. And I don't know. I think it's a fair tax. Thank you,
Sam. Go ahead, Chris. Okay, I pointed him first.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Sam, for letting us know that you passed that on to us on that thing. And that is what the town. I know. The thing that you're gonna have to convince the people with, because this is not a tourist town. We are not Shelburne. We don't have a Shelburne Museum. We're not St. Albans. We don't have all these big things. The people that are gonna be paying this tax are the residents. The people are gonna get taxed again, some more tax. It's only another $1. You keep adding these dollars on to Sam's place, down to your place, every place, it's $1. If we don't like it, we don't have to go there and eat. We can't eat electricity. We're gonna get taxed on that too. Everything is gonna go up. We got this crazy guy in the White House putting these tariffs on, and you can't tell me that the prices are gonna go up eventually for every one of us. I got tax after tax after tax. And now you're gonna be asking us as voters to approve another tax. The tourists we don't have are gonna pick this up. It's gonna be on us. It's gonna be on the people, Hyde Park, Elmore, and us. It's gonna be a hard sell to do, especially when they see this budget that's coming up. That's all. If you can convince us that it's okay, that we can afford it, that's okay. 20% of this population in this town is over 60. Our incomes are not going to increase. It doesn't to pay for these increases in the taxes. Eventually, you're going to force us out of this town. That's what's going to happen with all these taxes. Just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Tom. Go ahead.
My name is Chris Palermo. I'm a resident here. And 2.5 years ago, when I first came on the select board, we began talking about local option tax. And with all the information that Jeff has presented to us then and now, and the information that I've gotten, which is readily available through the tax department website, I mean, Morristown would look to gain $1.2 million. We've sat here for a year and a half and listened to all the infrastructure needs that we have in this town. It's millions of dollars. It's tens of millions of dollars between public safety, DPW, the municipality. We are spending more money on fire trucks because we're undersized in our firehouse. We have a police department that is way undersized and inefficient. It's going to be a talking point in the next union negotiation. We have
buildings like the Noise House that have fallen in complete disrepair, and we have sidewalks and highways that are going to take millions of dollars to bring up to speed. If we were to raise $1.2 million on our taxes, it would raise our tax rate 10.25 cents. So if your tax rate today is 75
That's
cents.
without the LOT.
Right. So if you were going to raise the revenue in tax dollars, property tax dollars that you'd get in LOT, you'd be raising it 10.25 cents. And that's on top of the 75 cents that we're currently paying in our property tax. That would take it at over 85 cents. It would raise my property taxes over $1,000. There's no way that I'm going to go out and spend that kind of money on LOT taxes. I'd have to spend $2.50 in LOT alone a day to get to that amount. And that would be over $300 a day in actual expenses to get that amount of LOT revenue. So I think that at the end of the day here, the biggest decision is that the board needs to present this to the voters in 4 separate items, the 4 separate taxes. I think that 4,200 registered voters in this community ought to have a say in this, that it's not debated tonight, it's not killed tonight, that we owe it to the voters in this community to say yes or no on any combination or all of the local option taxes. And I think that the board, it's incumbent upon you to come up with an allocation process so that the taxpayers know, or the voters know, what the money is going to be utilized for moving forward. And I think, to be honest with you, this is the most significant decision, economic decision this community is going to make this decade. And I think that a careful presentation, an educated presentation to the public will tell us in March whether this is something that they are willing to accept. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else in the audience? Yep.
Very thrown. It's a little high, but looking at what Jeff has given us, and it is something I've just been looking at while I'm sitting here, so I haven't had a lot of time to analyze it. But it appears to me that the largest chunk of the LOT tax, the combination of the different things that make it up that we can vote for or against, the largest is on retail sales. And that's 79.5% of the total that we could collect from all sources. The second is annual meals tax, which is 12.5%. And then after that, we're looking at the last line, which I think is 50% per person for adjustment for lower HHYP, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. But that's 6.5%. So the lion's share, almost 80% of what we could collect comes from retail sales. And meals and alcohol are a very small portion of these projections. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? I have a letter I promised I'd read from somebody who can't be here tonight. Yeah, you've already, yeah. Let me just read this letter, and because she hasn't had a chance to weigh in yet. So this is from Christy Snip. It goes, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting due to a standing Tuesday night commitment, but wanted to pass along my thoughts on implementing LOT in Morristown. In short, I wholeheartedly support it. The opportunity to generate revenue from people outside our community will allow us to do more and, in theory, pay less in our own tax bills. If community members are going to foot the bill for things like road repairs and necessary improvements, why not do it with help? I file taxes every month on the state website as part of my job, and every month the list of towns implementing LOT grows. It's an opportunity that's too good to pass up. I also operate an Airbnb in my home, and contributing 1% from my STR, short-term rental, as part of the LOT seems more fair than a registry in which I'd be paying the same amount as someone who makes a whole lot more than me on their SDR. Finally, I suggest allocating a percentage of collected LOT to offset property taxes. I think this would go a long way toward getting skeptics to buy into the idea. Thank you for your time, Christy Snip. So I just wanted to read that. It seemed like an appropriate time to do that. I have some comments. I know you have some comments. I guess I'm not gonna, there's been a lot said, and a lot of what's on my paper here has been said, so I'll be quick. In the last year, the last 2 years, we've been asked multiple times in different contexts as a board to start looking for revenue, to start looking for ways to get money that isn't just property tax money. It's come up in a lot of different contexts, a lot of different discussions. For me, this is the big one. It's the biggest one I've heard of. This is the biggest opportunity we have. When you start looking at the total numbers, the LOT brings in numbers that nothing else I've heard of brings in. We can talk about, raising our EMS fees on surrounding towns and so on, but we're not talking 1.2, $1.6 million. This is a lot of money. We have tough budget decisions coming up again this year. We've had them every year since I've been on the board. My guess is there's going to be tough budget decisions every year going forward for a long time in this town and other towns. We have infrastructure needs. This has been talked about. Somebody tonight talked about $10 million worth of paving and sidewalks that we've been told about. We're spending somewhere in the order of $600,000 on paving this year. These are big numbers. We have a police station. And by the way, we've started that paving and we started the sidewalks. And that's a big shout out to administration and to our highway department. We have a police station that's small. We have a police force that, as part of their negotiations this year, are beginning to discuss, and demand might not be a bad word, a better police station. Our police station is not up to par for 2025. It is far from that. I'm looking at people that have been involved in this discussion and heard this discussion in this room many times. We have a female police officer finally on our force. Hooray. I've been talking about that for years. Yet there's no separate place for her to go in that building. That's just a little bit of it. There's lots of needs there. We have a fire station. Somebody just alluded to that, where we just paid a $300,000 surplus on a new fire truck because our fire building is too small. $300,000. That's a big chunk of money that we're paying extra because our fire building is not big enough for a standard size fire truck. Last night, it's interesting, last night when we were talking about a bunch of different things, somebody mentioned the $100,000 a year we're paying for a town highway building up on Old Creamery Road. We're paying $100,000 rent there because we don't own that building. And these are things that we've identified that we know we need to do. And in my mind, in Don McDowell's mind, the LOT does provide a way to raise money, not just from Morristown taxpayers, and I think that's the key right here, but from taxpayers that are coming into town and utilizing our infrastructure, utilizing the things that you and I are paying for, so they can get here safely, and get what they want and go back home. And we're paying for it, they're not. And so if there's a way to figure out that, for every dollar that the LOT raises, I'm putting 75 cents in and somebody else is putting 25 cents in, or I'm putting 60 cents in or somebody else is putting 40 cents in. It's one of those numbers. It's something like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. Why not have the surrounding communities do this? We've got close to 60 towns. I think when Jeff was here last time, there was only 20-some towns in the state of Vermont that were utilizing the LOT. Now we're close to 60. There's got to be something appealing out there to it. And the fact that very, very few towns are moving backwards on this tells us something as well. I think it's something we need to consider. We do need to do an educational program. We need to get the word out as to what this is really all about. But it's a way, it's not additional tax. It's a way to actually lessen our tax because we're figuring out a way to get those people who don't live in this town, that don't contribute to our property taxes to help pay for the infrastructure needs that we have. I'll just quote one other person. He can't be here tonight either. I think everyone in this room knows the business right next door, Power Play Sports. I spoke to Caleb today. He apologized profusely because he wanted to be here tonight. Caleb's another one who had great misgivings about LOT when it went in, I believe, in Waterbury. I believe he has a store down in Waterbury. But he, very similar to what Sam has said earlier, said that there's no reason for him to think that it's affected his sales at all. So I did ask him today if I could say that in his stead, and he agreed. So those are some of the things I have to say. I'll just say this and then I'll be quiet because I know there's others, but I think it's very important that we have voter approval for this LOT. I personally would like to see it on the March ballot. I would also like to see, long before that happens, an explicit statement as to how this money is going to be spent. I think that's really important, that is true. I think we need to have another meeting of this sort. I don't think we're done taking public input. I don't think we're done having a conversation about this as a board. I think, I think we need probably at least one more meeting in this conversation. So that's enough. Go ahead. Yeah.
So,
I can get some board members all.
yep. So, I have been in marketing and the business community throughout this state for the last 20 years. I think there's a very large philosophical issue that we are missing, and the fact that businesses are assets to us. We have got to stop looking at our businesses as revenue sources. If you look at Hardwick, they do not have a local options tax. Go there on a Monday, Tuesday night. They have restaurants. It's booming there, absolutely booming. Walk our streets on a Monday, Tuesday night. Nothing. I have been in this municipality going on 10 years now. We have done nothing to help our businesses, and I am a business. I run the Morrisville Farmers Market, and we had our worst year ever. Their economy is way down. I lost a farm that was in business for 20 years because he cannot afford to make a living farming anymore. I lost the Whipples are no longer raising beef because they have to deal with the USDA and they need a new tractor. They cannot afford to raise beef. Fat Chance is no longer doing eggs because the cost of grain is so high. This now means I have 3 major producers who no longer are producing, which means I now have to buy food from out of town or out of state. And what people are missing here is, if we build a vibrant community here and support our businesses, first of all, people will come. They support our staff. So this thing of, that they're not paying for infrastructure, they're paying for staff so they can afford to live and who can shop here. So there's just a very, very narrow-mindedness. Sam has left, and I can tell Sam, customers do know. I can tell you the cost of a can of cat food in every single business in this town. I can tell you the cost of bedding because I use it as cat litter. I know exactly what the cost is everywhere. So maybe some customers don't care, but there are a lot of us who do. And again, I think you look at Rocktoberfest, that's our big festival. That is not a big public draw. So again, I'm running a market. I'm on the ground floor. I'm not hanging out up at the golf course. I am down dealing with the people. And I can tell you, between the lost and SNAP benefits, I work with these people calculating every cent that they get. And many, I have a woman who actually is an Olympic gold medal winner who now has a walker and takes a bus from Johnson because there is no grocery store. And the fact that this town wants to charge her an extra 1%, to me is shameful. We're thankful that she comes in, and if she buys a cup of coffee, the more we can do to build our businesses and support our businesses, it will build the town. We have had 4 budgets that have been over 14% each. We've paid out $800,000 to pay down that. So now we're in trouble. And now the fix is, let's add tax because we're going to make $1 million. It's so short-sighted and it's so reactive, which I am absolutely against. I'm going to read a couple of quick things. ABC News says that government data, which they don't do anymore, showed an eye-popping 38% surge in wholesale price of vegetables. 38%. So that affects Allen and all of this. So the business, the room and meals taxes are down over the past year because nobody's coming to town. The Liberty Justice Department, who is an attorney, says these unlawful tariffs are inflicting serious harm on small businesses and jeopardizing their survival. If we don't have small businesses, then we might as well be a Williston and people did not move here to have a Walmart. I didn't. And so we're just looking behind. More importantly, our power bills are going up, and they just announced 10/1, tens of thousands of Vermonters are losing their Medicare Advantage. They quote 51,600 people, which means they now have to switch over to Medigap, which is going to cost them money. So many of our senior citizens are now looking at an additional $200 per year for Medicare. So I think we're thinking this backwards. Again, our businesses are our assets, and we need to take care of them and stop looking at them as a revenue source.
I have a very brief comment.
Can I just continue? I've given everyone in the public a chance to talk. I want to give each of the board members a chance to talk once. Go ahead, Richard.
I will say that the way I look at this is I have a change jar in my entryway of my house. When I come home from work, I throw all the change from the day in that jar. At the end of the year, I have a couple $100 or so in that jar. I would like it that if everyone that visited my house did the same, I would probably have, $500 in that jar at the end of the year that I could use to pay for things that I need to have done at my house, or things that I don't quite have the money to take care of right then. And I understand that this is a tax for sure, but it's I look at it as a way to get the things done that we need to have done. The police station, the fire department, the rescue, the roads. We need to get that done. We can't not take care of those things. And those things are going to come at a cost. And this is a way to essentially, I look at it kind of like maybe paying it in front. So your tax bill doesn't come due and you say, oh, I've got to come up with $1,000. Now you might have to come up with $800. That's kind of how I'm looking at it, is the jar in my entryway that everybody's throwing money in.
Leah?
I'm still processing, to be honest. I do understand that the sales tax does not apply to certain things. It does not apply to groceries, to clothing, shoes, the things that are not sales tax. It does, however, apply to utilities. I am not yet begun conversation with the budget. So, but I'm hearing about the needs and certainly have concern about how we are going to pay for everything. So I truly am still processing, and will do so, and I think comment more at the next meeting when we discuss it. I'm processing.
Can I add one?
Thanks. Would like to get George's thoughts.
I don't think it matters whether an individual is pro or con on this board. My belief is that this is too big an item to not put before the voters. If majority of people think this is a bad idea, and I agree with the suggestion that we list all of the individual potentials, the rooms and meals, the sales, those are separate ones, and give voters a chance to say yay or nay on each of those individually. If everybody says yay, then that's what exists. If two of them pass and two of them fail, that's what we live with. But it's, I think that the function of the board right now is to put, my opinion, George's opinion, is to put this before the voters at the appropriate time and provide information, clear, factual information. Businesses that are concerned about this certainly speak up, absolutely, there's no reason not to. But to not give the voters the opportunity to have their say, I think is the biggest mistake we can make. Let the 4,000 voters tell us how they feel. Do they want to pay this version of tax or not? Or do they want to look at a 20-year bond or not? I mean, voters could tell us, no, we're not going to spend X number of $1 billion in a bond on a police station, on a fire station, on parking, on the noise house, on that long list that keeps running through, on roads. If voters say no to this and they say no to a bond, I wonder what this community is going to look like. But I think this is a voter issue, and I think the job of the board is just simply get out as much practical information, factual information as possible, and let the voters in March tell us what they think.
Go ahead, Ed.
I'd like to underscore with a big dark line Laura's point that we don't do enough to support our businesses. And in my mind, because I like to go out occasionally and have a little fun and buy a meal, the sector in our local economy that's most ailing is music, entertainment. I mean, all of the skeptical comments here tonight included the phrase, we're not a Stowe, we're not a Shelburne, Middlebury, they got stuff too. And the question is, why not? It's certainly a large enough town. At one time, not that long ago, there was some element on a Saturday night. You could start at Bee's Knees early, have your dinner there, go down to Moog's for the rock and roll. And there were people on the streets on a hot summer night all over the place downtown. You know, there's no music now. Don't you tell me that there is. It's not happening. There's no entertainment in this town. How do we work with the businesses so that we get people from other zip codes to pay our expenses? Institutions in this town that we're so proud of, I would like to say, if they can't demonstrate that they're boosting our revenue through these new taxes, if they can't demonstrate it through bookkeeping, let's reconsider what kind of support we as a government and as a town are providing to them. You know, how many weekends do you go to? I don't want to name any at this point, but I visited them and I say, huh, what's going on here? You know, who's interested in this? Where are all the out-of-towners? Where are all the Canadians before we went to war with them? Where are these people and why are they not here? How many people come to our movie theater? So that's the question, is, you know, how do you, if you want your new taxes to work properly, you're going to have to do something to the business that supports them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ed. So I would say we've been at this for, yes, you can, and just we've been well over an hour and a half now, and Jeff's been answering our questions. So I just say if there's something new to add, let's add that. Go ahead.
So, I hear what George you're saying, but part of the problem is many of the owners of these businesses do not live here, so they do not have a voice in this, which I think is significant because they will be greatly affected. I just did a lot of work on my house. And the reason people are using e-commerce is because we do not have the stores here like Staples. So if we had the stores here, we'd be making the income, but we're not investing in putting the stores in, so they do e-commerce. But I also think about these huge construction companies when they're putting in $100,000, $200,000 kitchens and things. If 1% is going to be added, I would rent a space in Hardwick that doesn't have local option, and I'd have it delivered there. And I can tell you how many people I know that go down to Dartmouth Hitchcock and do liquor runs coming back, and they have proven that our alcohol tax has reduced the alcohol. So to say that they wouldn't go for gas, maybe in Shelburne, but there's a significant group that drive down to. And then just
To clarify one thing on
Yeah.
that point.
1 second. And then the thing about Montgomery is overturning theirs. I can tell you Montgomery has a thriving farmers market now. People are moving there. I have 2 bread producers up there because Montgomery is thriving, and they were smart enough to get rid of their tax. So careful what you ask for, folks.
There's 2 points I want to clarify. Number one, the liquor tax is a different tax. It's not part of the alcohol tax. The alcohol tax is what's served at establishments.
Okay.
Yes, so that's not affected by that. And number two, a lot of people have made a point that Morristown isn't Shelburne. It's not the city of St. Albans, and I certainly recognize that. They're conflating the fact with, I understand the ins and outs of what was done in those taxes, and I'm trying to explain to you within that experience. I'm not suggesting that Morristown is like any of those, and I'm not suggesting that this board, despite what Alan says, do this. That's a decision that you have to make. I'm just telling you that I know that it can be done, and I don't think the town of Shelburne or the city of St. Albans or Williston has anything over the community's ability to do this if you decide to do it.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to suggest that we've had a good evening, had a lot of input and a lot of discussion, and we're going to have more. Certainly not done.
It's a long way away.
March is a long way away, but it's also right around the corner, unfortunately. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Motion by Richard, a second by, 1 sec, folks, George. It is 7:13. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Thank you very much, everybody.